My name is Claire Donovan, and I was 29 years old when the people who threw me away at 14 showed up at my aunt's will, reading Wearing Black Clothes, Expensive Confidence, and the kind of smiles people wear when they think grief is about to become money. My mother entered the law office first. She looked exactly how I remembered her when she wanted strangers to admire her. Pearl earrings, soft perfume, careful tears already shining but not falling. My father followed behind her in a navy suit that pulled at the shoulders. My older brother Ryan walked in last, holding a leather folder like he had brought proof of something. They had not called me when Aunt Miriam died. They had not visited her in the hospital. They had not asked who held her hand during the last hour. But there they were at 10 a.m. on a rainy Monday in downtown Chicago, sitting across from me in a conference room on the 32nd floor, certain that blood would do what love never had. My mother looked at me and said, "Claire, I hope we can handle this like a family." I almost laughed. Family. The same woman had used that word 15 years earlier while packing my clothes into 3 grocery bags and leaving me outside our apartment building because I refused to give my scholarship check to Ryan. I was 14. Aunt Miriam was the one who came for me. Aunt Miriam was the one who raised me. Aunt Miriam was the one who sat through parent-teacher conferences, college tours, panic attacks, board exams, and every Christmas morning after that. And Aunt Miriam was the one whose attorney now opened a sealed envelope and said, "Before the estate is distributed, Ms. Bell left instructions that Clause 6 be read aloud if Claire's biological relatives attempted to claim family standing." My mother's smile faded. My father stopped tapping his pen. Ryan leaned forward. The attorney adjusted her glasses and read the first sentence. On October 4th, 2010, Leonard and Patricia Donovan voluntarily signed a notarized declaration relinquishing all parental rights and responsibilities for their minor daughter, Claire Elise Donovan. My mother stood so fast her chair struck the wall. That paper was never supposed to matter. I looked at her then. For the first time in 15 years, she had told the truth. To understand why that sentence did not destroy me, you need to know what had already been destroyed. I grew up in a 2-bedroom apartment in Cicero, Illinois, above a bakery that smelled like sugar in the morning and grease by night. My father, Leonard Donovan, sold used cars. My mother, Patricia, worked in the office of a private orthodontist and believed appearances were the first step toward morality. My brother Ryan was 3 years older than me and had been described as gifted since he learned to talk before I did. That word followed him around our house like a crown. Gifted. Gifted at baseball, though he quit 2 teams before high school. Gifted at leadership, though leadership mostly meant getting other people blamed for his mistakes. Gifted at business, though every business he started began with someone else's money and ended with a new excuse. I was not gifted. I was useful. That was the word my mother used when she wanted to sound kind. Claire is useful in the kitchen. Claire is useful with paperwork. Claire is useful with little kids. Useful children learn early that applause belongs to someone else, but responsibility does not. By 10, I was filling out forms my mother did not want to read. By 11, I was checking grocery receipts. By 12, I was helping Ryan rewrite essays he had forgotten until midnight, while my mother told me, "Your brother thinks faster than he writes." By 13, I understood that in our family, Ryan's future was a family investment, and my future was something I was expected to donate. The only person who disagreed was my mother's older sister, Miriam Bell. Aunt Miriam lived alone in Oak Park in a narrow brick house with too many books, too many plants, and exactly one rule. When you tell the truth, you do not have to remember which version you gave last time. She was not rich then, not in the way people imagined. She had built Bell Community Properties from one neglected 6-unit apartment building into a small but respected, affordable housing company. She owned buildings where retirees could still afford rent, where single mothers were not charged fake fees for broken blinds, where maintenance calls were answered before leaks became ceilings on the floor. My parents called her difficult. Tenants called her Miss Bell. I called her the only adult who asked me what I wanted before telling me what I owed. Every other Saturday, she took me to the public library. Not the mall, not brunch. The library. She would sit across from me with a stack of property ledgers while I read novels, math books, and anything about architecture or city planning. Sometimes she let me help her sort receipts. At 12, I asked why one building had so many repair costs. She turned the ledger toward me. "What do you see?" I read slowly. Same plumber, same pipe, same unit line. They keep fixing the symptom, not the wall behind it. Aunt Miriam smiled. "That is exactly right." I did not know then that she was teaching me to see patterns. I just knew that when I was with her, my thoughts were not interruptions. They were evidence. The summer, everything changed. I was 14. 8th grade had ended, and my math teacher, Mrs. Alvarez, had nominated me for the Northwestern Young Scholars Finance and Urban Planning Program. 6 weeks, residential, full scholarship, students from across the Midwest, classes in economics, community design, statistics, and public policy. I applied without telling my parents. Not because I was sneaky, because hope was safest when nobody in my house could spend it yet. The acceptance packet arrived in June. I opened it in the stairwell before going upstairs. Full scholarship. Room and board covered. Materials covered. Travel stipend included. I sat on the 3rd step, holding the letter, and for the first time in my life, I felt like a door had opened because I had knocked. I made the mistake of telling my mother at dinner. Ryan was at the table, scrolling his phone. My father was eating in front of the television. My mother was calculating which bills could wait until Friday. "I got into a program," I said. She did not look up. "What program?" I handed her the letter. She read the first line. Then the second. Then her face did something I recognized before I understood. Not pride. Inventory. "How much is the stipend?" I blinked. "What?" "It says travel stipend. How much?" $600. Ryan looked up then. 600? I took the letter back. "That is for transportation and supplies." My mother folded her hands. "Ryan needs money for his baseball showcase in Atlanta." My stomach dropped. Ryan had quit baseball 2 months earlier. It is not mine to give him. My father muted the television. "What did you say?" I swallowed. "The scholarship is for the program. It is in my name." Ryan laughed. "She thinks she's going to Northwestern now." My mother's voice became soft. "That was always dangerous. Claire, Your brother has opportunities, real ones. You are 14. You do not get to decide what this family needs." I looked at the letter in my hands. For years, I had given up frosting, flowers, school supplies, quiet, sleep, praise, space. Something in me refused to give this. "No," I said. The word was so small I barely heard it. But the room did. My father stood. My mother went still. Ryan smiled. My father said, "You live under my roof." My mother added, "And if you cannot support this family, maybe you should see what life looks like without one." I thought it was a threat. In my family, threats usually became silence, then tension, then nothing. 3 nights later, I came home from the library and found 3 grocery bags on the landing outside our apartment door. Inside were my clothes, my school notebooks, my library card, the acceptance packet. My mother opened the door halfway. Her face was dry. Not angry. Finished. "I called Miriam," she said. "She always thought she knew better. She can have you." I stared at her. "Mom?" She did not answer to it. My father stood behind her in the hallway, arms crossed, looking at the floor. Ryan was visible over his shoulder, chewing cereal from a bowl. Not one of them stepped outside. I sat on the landing for 2 hours. Then 3, then 4. The bakery downstairs closed. The hallway lights flickered on. A neighbor walked past and pretended not to see me. At 11:18, Aunt Miriam came up the stairs. She had driven from Oak Park in pajama pants under a trench coat. Her gray hair was pinned on one side and loose on the other. She saw the bags. She saw me. Then she looked at the apartment door. For 1 second, I thought she would knock it down. Instead, she crouched in front of me. "Claire," she said, voice shaking with rage she refused to hand to a child. "Look at me." I did. "Yet you did not cause this." I started crying then. Not politely, not quietly, like something inside me had finally been given permission to believe it was hurt. She wrapped me in her coat. "From now on," she said, "you come home with me." What I did not know was that before Aunt Miriam carried my bags downstairs, my mother signed a document in the apartment kitchen. My father signed too. Aunt Miriam had brought it because she knew my parents well enough to prepare for the worst and smart enough to make the worst legally useful. I was 14. I did not read it. I only saw a notary stamp and my mother's hand moving across the page. 15 years later, that same document would sit on a polished conference table while my mother tried to pretend she had never chosen it. Aunt Miriam's house smelled like paper, basil, and old wood. The guest room she gave me had a narrow bed, a desk under the window, and one framed print of a city block drawn in ink. No one had ever prepared a room for me before. The first morning, I woke up expecting someone to tell me I had slept too late. Instead, Aunt Miriam knocked once and said, "Pancakes in 10. Bring your scholarship letter." I froze. "Are you mad?" She leaned into the doorway. "I am furious. Not at you." At breakfast, she read the entire packet. Then she called Northwestern. Then she called a lawyer. Then she called my school. By noon, she had arranged transportation, emergency contact forms, and temporary guardianship paperwork. At 2, She took me shopping for program supplies. Not Ryan. Not the family. Me. I stood in the aisle holding a graphing calculator that cost more than anything my parents had ever bought just for me. I can get a cheaper one, I said. Aunt Miriam looked at the box. Does the program recommend this one? Yes. Then we are buying this one. We. She met my eyes. That word rebuilt something. Slowly, the 6-week program changed my life. Not because it was perfect. I was homesick. I was younger than some students. I cried twice in the bathroom because everyone seemed to know how to belong to their own future. But I learned that numbers could explain injustice without making it less human. I learned how zoning changed schools, how lending patterns shaped neighborhoods, how repairs delayed for poor tenants became wealth for someone else, how property could be shelter or weapon depending on who held the deed. When I came home, Aunt Miriam took me to one of her buildings on the west side. A tenant named Mrs. Coleman had been waiting near the entrance. Miss Bell, she said, the new rail looks good. Aunt Miriam inspected the stair rail herself. Then she turned to me. What did you notice? I looked. The stairs are steep. The rail helps, but the landing light is weak. If someone comes down at night, shadows cover the last step. Mrs. Coleman pointed at me. That child knows. Aunt Miriam smiled. She usually does. That was how I began learning her business. Not from the top. From the stairs. The basement boilers. The rent ledgers. The tenant calls. The legal aid flyers. The city inspection codes. Aunt Miriam never said, "You will inherit this." She said, "If you understand a building only from the owner's office, you do not understand the building." I attended high school in Oak Park. I graduated valedictorian. Aunt Miriam sat in the front row with a tissue in one hand and a pen in the other because she corrected a typo in the commencement program. My parents did not come. They were invited. I know because Aunt Miriam sent the invitations certified mail. The receipts went into a folder. Keep records. She had learned that from someone before her. I got into the University of Chicago with financial aid and scholarships. I studied public policy and economics. Later, I earned a master's degree in real estate finance and community development. Aunt Miriam paid what scholarships did not. Not once did she call it sacrifice. She called it investment. By 24, I was working full-time at Bell Community Properties. By 26, I was Director of Acquisitions. By 28, I was Chief Operating Officer. When Aunt Miriam turned 71, we managed 34 buildings across Chicago and the suburbs, valued at just over $42 million. But she cared less about valuation than occupancy stability, repair response times, and whether the elderly tenants at West Polk had enough benches near the bus stop. She sent me an email on my 28th birthday. Subject line, to my daughter. Claire, you came to me with 3 grocery bags and a scholarship letter. You built a life out of both. Do not ever confuse being unwanted by the wrong people with being unworthy. Happy birthday? I printed it, framed it, kept it on my desk. My biological family contacted me 4 times in 15 years. The first was when I was 16. My mother called Aunt Miriam asking for help with Ryan's car payments. Aunt Miriam told her that people who give away a child should not come back asking for transportation money. The second was when I was 21. Ryan sent me a Facebook message. Heard you're doing numbers now. Aunt Miriam rich yet? I blocked him. The third was when I was 25. My father left a voicemail saying my mother had surgery and it would look bad if I did not visit. I sent flowers with no return address. The fourth was when Aunt Miriam's illness became visible enough that people started checking the value of her buildings. That was when my mother remembered my name. Aunt Miriam was diagnosed with stage 4 ovarian cancer in late 2024. She had been tired for months and blamed it on bad contractors, alderman meetings, and the fact that Chicago winters were an argument nobody wins. By the time she went to the doctor, the cancer had already made plans. The oncologist said 12 months if treatment went well. She lasted 7. During those months, Aunt Miriam remained exactly herself, which is to say she made everyone around her feel underprepared. She held staff meetings from a recliner. She corrected lease language from a hospital bed. She asked the maintenance supervisor whether Unit 3B had finally gotten a new refrigerator while nurses adjusted her IV. She met with her estate attorney, Nadine Kapoor, 3 times. I knew she was updating the will. I did not ask details, not because I did not care, because talking about inheritance while the person you love is still alive feels like measuring curtains in a burning house. Once, I said, "Miriam, you do not have to make everything perfect before you go." She opened one eye. I disagree. Then she handed me a binder. Inside were building notes, charity contacts, staff recommendations, and a tab labeled "If They Come." I looked up. "If who comes?" Her mouth tightened. "Your mother?" My stomach folded. "She will not." Aunt Miriam gave me the look she used when someone tried to explain her own business to her. "Claire." I said nothing. She reached for my hand. "I do not want you surprised by predictable people." That was love in her language. Protection against shock. She died on June 3rd, 2025, at 4:12 in the morning, in hospice, with rain hitting the windows and my hand under hers. Her last words to me were not dramatic. They were, "Do not forget the roof inspections." Then, after a long pause, "And do not let Patricia cry her way into the room." I laughed and cried at the same time. She smiled. Then she was gone. The memorial was small because that was what she wanted. Tenants came, staff came. A city inspector came and admitted Miriam had frightened him for 20 years. Mrs. Coleman, older now, stood with a cane and said, "She fixed the light on my stairs before I fell." That is the kind of woman she was. My parents did not attend. Ryan did not attend. 3 days later, Nadine Kapoor called. "Claire," she said, "I received notice this morning that Patricia and Leonard Donovan, represented by attorney Graham Whitlock, intend to contest Miriam's will." I closed my eyes. There it was. Predictable people? On what grounds? Undue influence. They claim you isolated Miriam from her extended family and manipulated her estate planning during illness. I looked at Aunt Miriam's framed birthday email on my desk. To my daughter. "What do they want?" Nadine sighed. 40% of the estate or a settlement to withdraw the challenge. I almost laughed. 40% of a woman they never called? They are arguing Patricia is Miriam's only surviving sibling. My mother signed me away. Yeah, Nadine said. And Miriam anticipated that would matter. The will reading was set for July 14th, 2025. Nadine said my parents had demanded to attend. Let them, I said. Claire, no settlement, no private payoff. If they want to claim family in public, we will discuss family in public. There was a pause. Then Nadine said, Miriam hoped you would say that. The 5 days before the will reading felt like standing in front of a locked door, knowing a fire waited behind it. My best friend and operations director, Sienna Brooks, helped me organize documents. She had joined Bell Community Properties 6 years earlier as a tenant services coordinator and had become the person who could calm a furious tenant, a panicked banker, and me with equal efficiency. Certified guardianship transfer, she said, placing one document in a folder. Check. School records showing Miriam as emergency contact. Check. Medical power of attorney. A check. Adoption decree. I froze. Sienna looked up. Claire? I still hate seeing that word. Adoption? I nodded. Aunt Miriam had formally adopted me when I was 16. It was legal, quiet, and somehow both healing and heartbreaking. My parents had already relinquished parental rights, so their consent was not required. The judge asked me if I understood what adoption meant. I said yes. What I did not say was that I understood it less as gaining a mother and more as receiving legal confirmation that the one who had acted like one had the right to keep doing so. Aunt Miriam took me to lunch afterward. She ordered chocolate cake. I said, "Does this make me Claire Bell?" She said, "Only if you want." I kept Donovan then, not because I wanted my parents, because I was not ready to let them decide which parts of my name I had to lose. At 26, I changed it legally. Claire Elise Bell. Aunt Miriam pretended not to cry at the courthouse. Badly. The document went into the folder. Nadine had more emails from Aunt Miriam documenting the night she picked me up. A letter she wrote to my parents in 2011 after they attempted to claim me as a dependent on their taxes. A response from my mother saying, "If Miriam wants the burden, she can have the burden." I had never seen that one. Sienna read it first and said a word she did not usually say at work. I took the page. There it was. My mother's signature under a sentence that reduced me to weight. The burden. My hands trembled. Sienna reached across the desk. "We can stop." "No. You do not have to read every knife before you walk into the room." "I do," I said, "because she will pretend she never held them." That night, I met with my therapist, Dr. Alana Reed. She asked what I was afraid of. That I will enjoy watching them lose. "And if you do?" I looked at her. "Does that make me like them?" "No," she said. "Wanting truth to land is not the same as wanting cruelty to win." I sat with that. Truth landing. That was what I wanted. Not screaming. Not revenge. Just the weight of the record placed where my mother could no longer step around it. Before bed, I stood in front of the mirror. I had Aunt Miriam's dark hair. She used to say, my grandmother's eyes, my own mouth. "She has no power over you," I told my reflection. Then I corrected myself. "She has the power you hand her." On July 14th, I wore a charcoal suit, low heels, and Aunt Miriam's silver watch. The law offices of Kapoor and Willis occupied the 41st floor of a glass building overlooking the Chicago River. The conference room had a long walnut table, gray leather chairs, and windows that turned the city into something distant and quiet. I arrived 15 minutes early. Already present were Nadine Kapoor, 2 associates, Bell Community Properties senior accountant, 4 staff members, representatives from 3 nonprofits Aunt Miriam had supported, and Sienna. I sat at the main table, not because I needed to dominate the room, because Aunt Miriam had assigned my seat. At 10:03, the elevator doors opened. My mother stepped out first. Patricia Donovan wore black, but not grief black. Performance black. A fitted dress, pearl necklace, fresh highlights, makeup designed to survive tears. My father followed, older and heavier, face set in the familiar expression of a man hoping silence could pass for innocence. Ryan came last in a gray suit with a blue tie, holding a folder and looking around as if estimating resale value. Their attorney, Graham Whitlock, walked beside them, tall, expensive, silver-haired, with the practiced calm of a man who had billed people for losing slowly. My mother entered the conference room and looked at me. Her eyes moved from my suit to my watch to my seat at the table. Then she smiled. "Claire," she said, voice soft enough for witnesses. "I wish we were meeting again under happier circumstances." I did not stand. "Patricia," the name struck her. "Not Mom. Never again." Her smile tightened. "We were hoping to speak privately before this begins. Family matters should not be handled like business." Nadine spoke before I could. "Mrs. Donovan, your seats are along the wall. The main table is reserved for beneficiaries, estate representatives, and named organizational recipients." My mother blinked. "Excuse me?" Nadine repeated it with no change in tone. "Your seats are along the wall," Ryan whispered. "Are you kidding me?" Sienna's eyes flicked toward me. I gave nothing away. My family sat against the wall. For once, they were not at the center of my story. My mother did not know how to endure that quietly. As people settled, she leaned toward the nonprofit representative nearest her. "I am Patricia. Miriam was my sister. We were very close before Claire came between us." The woman, a director from a housing justice nonprofit, simply said, "I worked with Miriam for 12 years. She spoke about Claire often." My mother's smile faltered. Ryan muttered, loud enough to hear, "I bet she did." I looked down at my folder. "Do not feed predictable people." At 10:12, Nadine opened the sealed envelope. "This is the last will and testament of Miriam Ruth Bell, executed February 18th, 2025, while Ms. Bell was of sound mind and under no undue influence." Graham Whitlock shifted. Nadine continued. She read the formal clauses. Identity, revocation of prior wills, confirmation of capacity. She noted that 2 physicians had confirmed Miriam's mental competency within 30 days of execution. She noted that the will had been witnessed, notarized, and recorded with a video statement. My mother's attorney stopped writing for the first time. Nadine turned to Article 4. "At the time of death, Ms. Bell's estate includes Bell Community Properties, a privately held company managing 34 residential and mixed-use buildings with a current appraised value of approximately $46.8 million, investment accounts totaling $6.2 million, liquid assets of $2.1 million, and personal property, including the Oak Park residence. Ryan whispered something I could not hear. My mother's eyes brightened. Not with grief. With math. Nadine turned the page. Article 5, regarding Patricia Bell Donovan, sister of the deceased. My mother sat straighter. I make no provision in this will for my sister, Patricia Bell Donovan, for the following reasons, which I direct to be read aloud if she or her representatives seek standing as family. My mother's smile vanished. Nadine read on. First, Patricia Bell Donovan voluntarily severed her parental relationship with Claire Elise Donovan on October 4th, 2010, by signing a notarized declaration relinquishing all parental rights and responsibilities and transferring full guardianship to me, Miriam Ruth Bell. My mother stood. That document was temporary. Nadine looked up. It was an emergency arrangement. Nadine lifted a certified copy. It was a permanent relinquishment, signed by both biological parents and filed with Cook County Family Court. My mother's face flushed. My father stared at the carpet. Ryan leaned forward. What does that have to do with Aunt Miriam's money? Nadine turned slightly toward him. I am reading Ms. Bell's explanation. Then she continued. So second, Patricia and Leonard Donovan did not provide support, care, visitation, or meaningful contact to Claire after that date, except for attempts to obtain financial assistance from me. Third, Patricia and Leonard Donovan treated Claire's removal from their household not as a tragedy, but as a convenience. My mother's voice cracked. This is character assassination. I looked at her. No, I said. It is minutes from a meeting you forgot someone else was documenting. The room went silent. My mother turned on me. You have no idea what I was going through. I was 14. You were impossible. I had a scholarship. You were selfish. I stood then. Slowly, not because I needed to tower over her, because I wanted the room to see that the child from the landing had grown. You put my clothes in grocery bags, I said. You left me outside the apartment for 4 hours. You signed away your rights while I sat under a broken hallway light, wondering why nobody opened the door. Her mouth opened. I kept going. You can call it stress or hardship or family conflict, but the document says what happened. You gave me away. My father whispered, Claire. I looked at him. You watched. He closed his mouth. Nadine said, May I continue? I sat. My mother did too. But the room had changed. The performance had cracked. Now everyone could see the machinery underneath. Nadine turned to Article 6. This article addresses the legal relationship between Miriam Ruth Bell and Claire Elise Bell. My mother frowned. Bell. She heard it. Ryan heard it too. Nadine read, On May 9th, 2012, I legally adopted Claire Elise Donovan, then 16, in Cook County Family Court, case number 2012 AD 7714. Her biological parents' consent was not required due to their prior voluntary relinquishment. Ryan said. Adopted? My mother gripped the edge of her chair. Nadine continued. Claire is my daughter in every sense that matters. Legally, emotionally, practically, and morally. She has worked beside me, cared for me, challenged me, protected the tenants I love, and become the person I always knew she would become. I leave my estate not to a niece, not to a dependent, not to a convenient heir, but to my daughter. I looked down. The words blurred. I had known about the adoption. I had not known she wrote it like that. Nadine continued. Article 7, Designation of Sole Beneficiary. I hereby bequeath the entirety of my estate, including all ownership interest in Bell Community Properties, real property, investment accounts, liquid assets, and personal effects, to Claire Elise Bell. My mother made a sound. Small. Uncontrolled. For one moment, I saw not a villain, but a woman watching the consequence of one signature arrive 15 years late. Then she recovered badly. This cannot be legal, she said. Graham, tell them. Graham Whitlock cleared his throat. There may still be grounds to examine undue influence, particularly considering Ms. Bell's illness. Nadine nodded, as if she had expected exactly that. But thank you. Ms. Bell also anticipated that claim. She turned to her associate. A screen at the end of the conference room came to life. A video appeared. Aunt Miriam, thinner than I wanted to remember, seated in her library with a blanket over her knees. Her voice was weaker, but her eyes were sharp. If this video is being played, she said, Patricia is likely pretending she was kept from me. My mother whispered, Miriam. On screen, Aunt Miriam continued, no one kept Patricia from me. I stopped answering her calls because she asked about my assets before asking about my treatment. Claire did not isolate me. Claire drove me to appointments, managed my medications, ran the company, and still had the grace to ask whether I wanted Patricia called. I said no. The room was absolutely still. Aunt Miriam took a breath. I am of sound mind. I know exactly what I am doing. I am leaving everything to my daughter Claire because she is the person who showed up. If anyone wants to challenge that, let them first explain what they were doing when she was 14 and sitting outside with her belongings in bags. The video ended. No one moved. Nadine closed the laptop. Ms. Bell recorded that statement on February 18th with 2 witnesses present. Graham Whitlock's face had gone pale. My mother turned toward him. You said we had a strong case. He did not answer quickly enough. Nadine slid another document across the table. Before you advise your clients further, Mr. Whitlock, you should be aware of this correspondence. He picked it up. His eyes scanned, then stopped. Nadine said, You previously consulted with Miriam Bell in 2023 regarding estate protection. She declined to retain you after you suggested including Patricia in a settlement structure to avoid conflict. You did not disclose that prior consultation to your current clients. My mother stared at him. Graham? He set the document down. This is more complicated than I was led to believe, Sienna muttered under her breath. That is lawyer for I'm leaving. Graham stood. I need to review these materials before proceeding. Ryan exploded. You're walking out? I am suspending representation pending conflict review. My mother stood too. You promised us they would settle. There it was. Not truth. Not justice. Settlement. The room heard it. Graham's mouth tightened. He gathered his briefcase and left. The door closed softly. My mother stood abandoned in the center of a room where she had expected to collect millions. It should have felt satisfying. It mostly felt sad. Not for her. For the girl I used to be, who would have given anything for that woman to look at her with even half as much urgency as she now looked at a lost inheritance. My mother made one final attempt. Not angry this time. Soft. She came toward the table with both hands raised, palms open, as if approaching a frightened animal. Claire, she said, I know mistakes were made. I almost smiled. Mistakes were made. The grammar of cowards. I was overwhelmed, she continued. Your father and I had bills. Ryan had opportunities. You were always so strong. I thought Miriam could give you more than we could. You left me on a landing. Her eyes filled. I regretted that. When? She stopped. I waited. When Aunt Miriam's estate was appraised? The tears came then. Real or useful? I could not tell. Maybe both. Please, she whispered. We are still blood. I stood. Blood did not come get me. She flinched. Aunt Miriam did. My father finally spoke. We made a terrible mistake. I turned to him. You made a decision. Stop making it smaller. His face collapsed a little. Ryan said, So that is it? You get everything, and we get nothing? I looked at my brother. He had aged into exactly the kind of man who believed fairness meant being handed what someone else had survived. You got my scholarship money, I said. You got their attention. You got every room I was pushed out of. That was your inheritance. His face reddened. I was a kid. So was I. That ended him. Not because he understood. Because there was no performance left that could make his childhood larger than mine. Nadine asked whether I wanted to proceed. Yes. The remaining clauses were read. Aunt Miriam left $1 million total to housing, legal aid, tenant emergency funds, and a scholarship for girls entering urban planning, economics, engineering, or finance after family displacement. She left personal items to tenants, staff, and friends. Her garden tools to Mrs. Coleman. Her collection of first edition city planning books to me. Her red raincoat to Sienna, who laughed through tears because Miriam once told her she needed color during inspections. At the end, Nadine asked if I wished to speak. I had not planned to, but Aunt Miriam had taught me that some rooms should not close without a record. I stood. Miriam Bell took me in when I was 14 and made sure I never mistook rejection for identity. She taught me that housing is dignity, that numbers tell stories, and that family is measured by who turns on the porch light. My voice broke there. I let it. My biological parents made a choice 15 years ago. Today, the law acknowledged that choice. I am not celebrating their loss. I am honoring the truth, and I will honor Miriam by continuing her work. I looked at the nonprofit representatives. The scholarship will be established as she directed. I will increase the first-year funding personally. Then I looked at my mother. I forgave you years ago because I did not want to carry you forever. But forgiveness is not access. You have no claim on me. Not legally, not emotionally, not financially. My mother whispered, "Claire, please." "No," I said. "You taught me that a door can close. Miriam taught me that another one can open. I am choosing the open door." I sat. For a moment, there was silence. Then Mrs. Alvarez stood from the back row. I had not seen her when I entered. My 8th grade math teacher. Older now, hair silver, hands folded around a cane. Aunt Miriam had invited her. Of course she had. Mrs. Alvarez began to clap. Then Sienna. Then the staff. Then the nonprofit representatives. I cried openly then. Not because I had won, because the people clapping were not applauding money. They were witnessing survival. The reading ended at 12:04 p.m. My parents left separately from Ryan. My father paused at the door and looked back once. My mother did not. Ryan sent one text that evening. "Must be nice to get rich playing victim." I blocked him. Then I took Aunt Miriam's red raincoat from the chair, pressed it to my face, and finally let myself grieve without defending the grief from anyone. The aftermath was quieter than people might expect. Nadine filed a report about Graham Whitlock's undisclosed prior consultation. Whether the bar disciplined him, I barely followed. I had no interest in collecting fallen men as trophies. My mother sent one email 2 weeks later. Subject, please, Claire. I have replayed that day many times. I know you believe I abandoned you. I know that is your truth. I wish we could sit down and talk woman to woman. I was under pressure. I was scared. I did what I thought was best at the time. You have to understand that mothers make mistakes. Nothing changes the fact that I gave birth to you. I will always love you. Mom. I read it once. Then I showed it to Dr. Reed. What do you notice? She asked. She says I believe she abandoned me. Not that she did. What else? She says she did what she thought was best, not what was best for me. What else? She still signs Mom. Doctor, Reed nodded. What do you want to say? It took me 3 days. My reply was 5 sentences. Patricia, you did not lose me because you made one mistake. You lost me because you made a choice, signed it, and spent 15 years pretending I caused it. I have forgiven you for my own peace, but I do not want a relationship. Please do not contact me again. Claire. She did not respond. My father sent a separate letter. Handwritten. No return address. Claire. I watched your mother make decisions because it was easier than disagreeing. That is not an excuse. I failed you. I do not expect forgiveness. I only wanted to say that I remember you on the landing, and I have hated myself for not opening the door. Leonard. I sat with that letter for a long time. It was not enough. Nothing could be. But unlike my mother's email, it named the wound. I put it in a folder labeled Maybe One Day. Not yes. Not no. A folder. Ryan tried reaching me through 3 different accounts. I blocked all of them. Later, I heard from a cousin that he had told people I stole his family's wealth. That was almost funny. Almost. Sienna and I focused on the company. Bell Community Properties became Bell Housing Trust and Development within 6 months. We created a tenant repair response fund, expanded legal aid partnerships, and launched the Miriam Bell Scholarship for girls who lost educational opportunities because adults used money as control. The first recipient was a 15-year-old named Janelle, who had won a robotics camp scholarship her stepfather tried to cash for rent. When she came to the office with her grandmother, she kept apologizing for asking questions. I recognized the posture. Shoulders slightly in, hands folded too tightly, gratitude mixed with fear. I gave her a graphing calculator, the same model I had once been afraid to let Aunt Miriam buy. Janelle held it like it might disappear. "This is really for me?" "Yes," I said. "It is really for you." Her grandmother cried. "So did I later, in my office, with the door closed." A year after the will reading, we placed a bronze plaque outside Aunt Miriam's first building. Miriam Ruth Bell, 1949 to 2025. She turned on the porch light. Mrs. Coleman came, wrapped in a purple scarf. Mrs. Alvarez came. Sienna came. Half the staff came. Tenants leaned out windows. Someone brought tamales. Someone else brought cake. I stood in front of the building, remembering grocery bags, scholarship letters, Aunt Miriam's coat, the first time someone said "we" and meant me included. Nadine asked if I wanted to say something. I did. Miriam used to say, "A building is not what it costs. It is what it protects." She protected me when I had no right left in the place I came from. Everything we do now will be measured against that. I touched the plaque. Protection is a legacy, too. The wind moved through the trees. For a second, I could almost hear Aunt Miriam's voice. "Do not forget the roof inspections." I smiled. "I won't." People ask if I am happy now. The answer is yes, but not in the way stories make it sound. Happiness after abandonment is not a parade. It is a quiet morning when the phone rings and your stomach doesn't drop. It is buying groceries without calculating whether you are worth the expensive fruit. It is sitting at your own table and knowing no one there gets to vote on your place. It is understanding that peace can feel boring until you remember chaos used to feel normal. I still have hard days. Some nights, I dream I am back on the landing with the grocery bags. In the dream, I keep waiting for the door to open. Sometimes I wake up before Aunt Miriam arrives. On those mornings, I make coffee, open my laptop, and read the scholarship applications. That helps, because the story does not end with the child on the landing. It continues with every door she opens for someone else. Here is what I learned from 15 years, one notarized document, and a will clause my mother never expected to matter. People can throw you away and still return to claim what you became. They can call you difficult when you refuse to fund their favorites. They can sign you over and later say blood should count. But signatures matter. Choices matter. The truth you make legal when you think nobody important is watching can become the exact truth that stops you at the door. My mother thought the paper she signed at our kitchen table was just a way to get rid of a problem. 15 years later, that paper told the world she had given up the right to call me one. I am Claire Elise Bell. I was not rescued because I was weak. I was loved because I was worthy. Aunt Miriam did not give me a life. She gave me a place to build one. And if there is one thing I want you to remember, it is this. Forgiveness does not mean reopening a door someone slammed on a child. Sometimes forgiveness means walking through the door someone better opened for you, locking it gently behind you, and using every room inside to become free.